The rain struck the porch roof like 1,000 tiny hammers, and Jameson Yardley watched through the window as the orc girl stood motionless in his wheat field, water streaming down her green skin until she looked like a statue carved from jade. She had been there since dawn, and now the afternoon light was dying behind storm clouds that showed no sign of breaking. He had tried ignoring her, tried pretending she was just another oddity in a frontier life full of strange happenings, but something about her stillness made his chest ache in a way he could not name. She was tall, perhaps 6 feet, with broad shoulders and muscled arms that spoke of hard labor. Her black hair hung in a thick braid down her back, sodden now and dripping. Even from this distance, he could see the small tusks that curved up from her lower jaw and the pointed tips of her ears. She wore simple traveling clothes, a worn tunic, and trousers that clung to her body in the downpour. Her eyes, when she had first arrived and called out to him, had been amber gold, bright and fierce despite the exhaustion that lined her face. "Please," she had said, her voice carrying across the field. "I need shelter. Just for a night. I will work for it. I will not trouble you." Jameson had stood on his porch, 30 yards away, his hand on the door frame. "I do not take in strangers," he had called back, and it was true. Out here on the frontier, 3 days' ride from the nearest village, a man learned to be cautious, especially when that stranger was an orc. "Then I will wait," she had said, and she had planted herself right there in the middle of his wheat field, raindrops already beginning to speckle her shoulders. "I will wait until you let me in." That had been 8 hours ago. Jameson turned from the window and paced across his small cabin. It was a simple place, built with his own hands over 3 years of backbreaking work. One large room served as kitchen, dining area, and living space. A ladder led to a sleeping loft above. The hearth crackled with a fire that pushed back the damp chill. He had hung herbs to dry from the rafters, and his few possessions, books, tools, a spare set of clothes, were neatly organized on shelves he had carved himself. He was a solitary man by choice. 5 years ago, he had left the eastern settlements after the war, after seeing what men could do to each other when fear and hatred took root. He had seen orcs on the battlefield, yes, but he had also seen human cruelty that matched anything the enemy had done. The experience had left him hollow, wanting nothing more than quiet and distance. Now he had both, along with 40 acres of good wheat and a vegetable garden that kept him fed through the winter. He spoke to traders perhaps 4 times a year when they passed through. He went to the village for supplies twice annually. It was a lonely life, but it was peaceful, and peace was worth more than gold to a man who had seen what Jameson had seen. But this orc girl standing in the rain was disturbing that peace in ways he had not anticipated. He moved back to the window. She had not shifted position. Her arms hung at her sides, her face tilted slightly upward to let the rain wash over it. There was something almost meditative about her posture, as if she had found a place of calm in the storm. "Stubborn creature," Jameson muttered. He was 32 years old, lean and weathered from outdoor work, with brown hair that fell past his collar and a beard he kept trimmed short. His hands were calloused, his back strong. He knew himself to be a capable man, but not a cruel one. And leaving someone out in a storm like this, orc or not, felt increasingly like cruelty. The rational part of his mind argued that she had chosen to stand there. He had not forced her. She could leave any time she wanted. But another part, the part that still remembered what it felt like to be human, to care about another living being's suffering, gnawed at him with growing insistence. The rain intensified, if that was even possible. Thunder rolled across the sky, and lightning briefly illuminated the landscape in stark white relief. In that flash, he saw her flinch, just slightly, before resuming her statue-like stillness. Jameson cursed under his breath. He grabbed his oilskin coat from its peg by the door and threw it over his shoulders. He pulled on his boots, took a deep breath, and stepped out into the storm. The rain hit him like a wall. Within seconds, water was running down his neck despite the coat. He trudged across the porch and down the steps, his boots squelching in mud that had once been his neatly maintained yard. The wheat field swayed and bent under the downpour, and he pushed through the stalks until he stood before her. Up close, she was even more striking than he had realized. Her skin was not just green but a complex shade that shifted between emerald and olive depending on how the light hit it. Small scars marked her arms and one traced along her jawline. Her eyes, when they focused on him, held a depth of weariness that made her seem far older than she probably was. "You are going to catch your death out here," Jameson said, having to raise his voice over the rain. "I have endured worse," she replied. Her voice was steady, though he could see she was shivering. "That is a foolish thing to say when you are soaked through and night is coming on." "I said I would wait, I meant it." Jameson stared at her, water streaming down his face. "Why?" She met his eyes. "Because I have nowhere else to go, because I have been walking for 6 days with little food and less hope. Because your cabin was the first sign of civilization I have seen in 3 days, and I am too tired to walk further. Because I thought if I asked respectfully, honestly, I might be shown kindness." She paused. "I see I was wrong." The words hit him harder than he expected. There was no anger in them, just a flat acceptance that made him feel suddenly ashamed. "Come inside," he said. She blinked, water dripping from her lashes. "What? Come inside. You can dry off by the fire, I will make food." He turned and started back toward the cabin, then stopped when he realized she was not following. "Well, are you coming or not? You mean it?" Her voice had changed, become smaller somehow, vulnerable. "I would not have said it otherwise. Come on before we both drown out here." She moved then, following him through the wheat field. He led her across the muddy yard and up the porch steps. At the door, she hesitated. "I will remove my boots. I do not wish to track mud inside." "Sensible," Jameson said. He kicked off his own boots and hung his dripping coat on a peg. "You can hang your things there to dry." She bent to unlace her boots with fingers that trembled from cold. He noticed her hands were large and strong, with thick calluses that spoke of hard work. When she straightened, she was perhaps an inch taller than him, which was unusual. He stood just under 6 feet himself. Inside, the warmth of the cabin must have felt like heaven to her. She stood dripping on his floor, and for a moment neither of them seemed to know what to do. "Wait here," Jameson said. He climbed the ladder to his sleeping loft and pulled his spare set of clothes from a trunk. They would be too small for her, but they were dry. He descended and handed them to her. "You can change behind that screen. There is a wash basin with clean water if you want to clean up." She took the clothes with a look of surprise. "Thank you. There are towels on the shelf." She moved behind the wooden screen he used for privacy when he bathed, and he heard the sound of wet fabric being peeled away. He turned his attention to the fire, adding another log and stoking it higher. He hung a pot of water to heat and pulled out vegetables from his cold storage: potatoes, carrots, and onion. He had dried venison from his last hunt, and he added that to the pot along with herbs and a handful of barley. When she emerged from behind the screen, she looked different. His clothes fit her poorly, the shirt strained across her shoulders and the trousers ended well above her ankles, but she was dry, and color was returning to her skin. She had toweled off her hair, though it still hung damp around her shoulders. "Better?" he asked. "Much." She hesitated. "I do not know your name." "Jameson Yardley. Most people call me James. I am Grusha." She said it simply, without embellishment. "Sit, Grusha." The stew will take a while to cook, but there is bread and cheese if you are hungry now." She sat at his rough wooden table as if afraid the chair might break under her, though it held her weight easily enough. He cut thick slices of bread from the loaf he had baked 2 days ago and set out a wedge of hard yellow cheese. She ate with careful deliberation, not wolfing down the food despite what must have been significant hunger. Jameson sat across from her with his own portion. The rain continued to hammer the roof, creating a steady percussion that filled the silence between them. "Why were you walking alone?" he asked finally. She finished chewing before answering. "I was cast out from my clan." "Why?" "Because I refused to participate in a raid on a human settlement." She met his eyes. "My people and yours have been fighting for generations. It is expected that young warriors prove themselves in battle. I told my chieftain I would not kill humans who had done me no harm. He said I was weak, that I had dishonored the clan. He exiled me." Jameson absorbed this. "That took courage," she shrugged, "or foolishness. The result is the same. I have no home now, no family. I have been wandering, trying to find a place where I might belong. And you thought you might find that here." He could not keep the skepticism from his voice. "No," she said softly. "I thought I might find shelter for a night and a meal. Belonging is too much to hope for." The honesty in her words disarmed him. He stood and checked the stew, stirring it slowly. "You said you would work for shelter. What kind of work can you do?" "I am strong. I can clear land, chop wood, haul water, mend fences. I can hunt. I am a good tracker. I can fight, though I would prefer not to. I learn quickly." She paused. "I would work hard for you if you would let me stay a while, just until I figure out where to go next." Jameson ladled stew into 2 wooden bowls and set one before her. "Eat first. We can talk about work later." They ate in silence, but it was a more comfortable silence now. The stew was simple but hot and filling, and he noticed Grusha closed her eyes briefly after the first spoonful as if savoring it. "This is good," she said. "It is adequate. I am not much of a cook. It is better than anything I have had in days." After they finished, Jameson cleaned the bowls while Grusha sat by the fire, holding her hands out to the warmth. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her movements slow and heavy. "You need rest," he said. "You can sleep in the loft." "I will take the floor down here." She turned to look at him. "No, this is your home. I will sleep by the fire. I have slept on worse. The loft has a proper bed with blankets. You are a guest. I am an orc who forced her way into your home by sheer stubbornness. I am hardly a guest." Despite himself, Jameson felt a smile tug at his mouth. "You did stand in my wheat field for 8 hours in a rainstorm. That suggests a certain determination. I told you I would wait until you let me in. You did." He pulled blankets from a chest and made a pallet on the floor near the hearth. "There. Now we both have a place to sleep, and neither of us has to feel guilty." She accepted this compromise with a nod. They prepared for sleep in the awkward way of strangers sharing space. Jameson banked the fire while Grusha settled onto the pallet. He climbed to the loft and lay on his bed, staring at the rafters. He could hear her breathing below, a steady rhythm that gradually slowed as she fell into sleep. The rain continued its assault on the roof. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Jameson wondered what he had just gotten himself into. He woke to morning sunlight streaming through the loft window and the smell of something cooking. For a moment he was disoriented, and then memory returned the orc girl, Grusha, standing in the rain. He sat up quickly and looked down into the main room. She was at his stove, stirring something in a pan. The blankets from her pallet were neatly folded and stacked. His clothes, which he still wore, looked wrinkled but dry. She moved with quiet efficiency, and he noticed she had already stoked the fire and set his kitchen to rights. "Good morning," she said without turning around. Her hearing must have been sharp to catch the creak of his movement. Morning. He climbed down the ladder. You did not have to cook. You fed me last night. It seemed fair to return the kindness. She gestured to the table where she had set out plates. I found eggs in your cold storage and made what we call turmac. It is an orc dish. I hope you do not mind. He sat down, curious. She brought over 2 plates, each holding what looked like a thick omelet filled with chopped vegetables and herbs. You found all that in my kitchen, he asked. You keep a well-stocked home. She sat across from him. Please eat. He cut into the turmac and took a bite. Flavor exploded across his tongue, savory and rich, with hints of spice he could not identify. This is excellent. She looked pleased. My mother taught me. She said that a warrior should know how to cook as well as fight because a hungry fighter is a dead fighter. Smart woman. She was. The past tense did not escape his notice. They ate, and Jameson found himself studying her in the morning light. She looked better rested, though still worn. The scars on her arms were more visible now, and he realized she had many more than he had initially seen, a tapestry of healed wounds that told a story of a hard life. What did you do in your clan? He asked. Before the exile. I was a scout and hunter. I tracked game, monitored the borders of our territory, watched for threats. It suited me. I preferred being alone in the forest to the politics of clan life. I understand that preference. She tilted her head, studying him. You live alone out here by choice? Yes. May I ask why? Jameson considered deflecting but found himself answering honestly. I fought in the war, 5 years ago before the last treaty. I saw terrible things, cruelty on both sides. When it was over, I did not want to be around people anymore. I wanted quiet and open space where I could not hurt anyone and no one could hurt me. And yet you let me in. You were very persistent. A hint of a smile touched her lips. I was desperate. That too. He pushed back from the table. You said you would work. I have work if you truly meant it. I meant it. Then let us begin. He found her an old shirt of his that fit better than the one she wore, though it was still tight across her shoulders. Her own clothes were still damp, hung by the fire. He gave her a pair of work gloves and led her outside. The rain had stopped sometime in the night, leaving everything clean and dripping. The sky was a clear, brilliant blue, and the air smelled of wet earth and growing things. His wheat field glistened in the sunlight, the stalks heavy with moisture. I need to check the drainage channels, Jameson explained. After a rain like that, they can get clogged with debris. If water sits in the field too long, it will rot the roots. They worked their way around the perimeter of the field, clearing leaves and branches from the shallow ditches he had dug. Grusha worked with impressive stamina, never complaining, asking questions about his farming methods that showed genuine interest. You do all this yourself? She asked, gesturing at the 40 acres. Yes. That is a lot of work for one person. It keeps me busy. By midday, they had cleared all the channels and inspected the wheat for damage. The storm had battered some of the stalks, but most would recover. Jameson felt cautiously optimistic about the harvest. They broke for lunch bread and leftover stew, and then Jameson showed her the fence line that needed mending. Several posts had rotted and needed replacing. We will need to dig new holes and set new posts, he explained. It is hard work. I can handle it. She was not exaggerating. Grusha dug with a strength that made him feel inadequate. She could lift and position fence posts he would have struggled with, holding them steady while he tamped earth around the base. They worked side by side through the afternoon, falling into an easy rhythm. Jameson found himself relaxing around her. She spoke little while working, but when she did speak, it was with a dry humor that surprised him. You know, she said at one point, When I imagined what I would do after exile, standing in a field mending fences was not high on the list. What was high on the list? Finding a mountain cave and becoming a hermit, learning to speak to animals, perhaps taking up interpretive dance. He barked a laugh. Interpretive dance. I would have been terrible at it, but at least I would have been alone. And yet here you are, mending my fences. Here I am, she agreed. Strange how life works out. By evening they had replaced 6 fence posts and reinforced several more. Jameson's back ached, and he could see Grusha was tired too, though she hid it well. They returned to the cabin, and this time they prepared dinner together. Grusha taught him how to season the venison the way her people did, with crushed juniper berries and wild garlic. The meat came out tender and flavorful. After dinner, they sat by the fire. Jameson had pulled out a book, a collection of folk tales from the Eastern Kingdoms, and was reading when Grusha spoke. "May I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Why did you really let me in?" "Last night, after keeping me out all day," he set down his book and thought about it. "I suppose because you were willing to wait. Anyone can demand something or give up when they do not get it immediately. But you said you would wait, and you did. That suggested you were serious, that you truly needed help, and I—" He paused. "I have been alone out here for 3 years. It is what I wanted, but sometimes I wonder if I have cut myself off too completely. Seeing you standing in that rain, so determined, so vulnerable, I could not live with myself if I left you out there." She nodded slowly. "I am grateful, more than I can say. You have been working hard. You are earning your keep. Still, gratitude is owed." They lapsed into silence again, but it was comfortable now, companionable. Jameson returned to his book. Grusha stared into the fire, her expression distant. "Your people," Jameson said after a while. "Do you miss them? Some of them. My mother is dead and my father died in a raid years ago. I had friends, but they sided with the chieftain when I was exiled. I understand they have families, obligations. They could not defend me without risking their own places in the clan." She sighed. "I miss the feeling of belonging, though, of having a purpose beyond simple survival." "I know that feeling." She looked at him. "Do you? Why do you think I left civilization? I lost my sense of purpose in the war. I thought I was fighting for something righteous, but by the end I could not tell the difference between us and the enemy. Everything I thought I believed in fell apart. So I came out here, thinking I would find purpose in simple things: growing food, building shelter, living quietly." He shook his head. "But purpose and isolation do not mix well. You can keep yourself busy, but busy is not the same as meaningful." "No," she agreed softly. "It is not. Maybe that is why I let you in. Maybe I needed someone else, even a stranger, even an orc, to remind me what it feels like to connect with another person." She met his eyes across the fire, and something passed between them, an understanding, fragile and new. Days blurred into a week, and then 2. Grusha stayed, and Jameson found reasons to extend her visit. There was always more work. The garden needed weeding, firewood needed chopping for winter, the cabin roof needed patching. They fell into a routine that felt surprisingly natural. Mornings, they worked separately. Jameson would check his wheat while Grusha hunted or foraged in the nearby forest. She proved to be an excellent hunter, bringing back rabbits, wild turkey, even a deer one memorable afternoon. She field-dressed the game with practiced efficiency, and taught him how to smoke the meat properly for long-term storage. Afternoons, they worked together on larger projects. They reinforced the barn where Jameson kept his plow horse, a patient mare named Bessie who seemed unbothered by Grusha's presence. They cleared a new section of land for a second garden plot. They repaired tools and organized the storage shed. Evenings were for cooking and quiet companionship. They talked more as the days passed, sharing stories from their different lives. Grusha told him about growing up in an orc clan, about the strict hierarchy and constant pressure to prove oneself worthy. Jameson told her about his childhood in a farming village, about the brother he lost to fever, about the girl he almost married before the war changed everything. "What happened to her?" Grusha asked. "The girl, she married someone else while I was away fighting. I do not blame her. She waited 3 years, and I came back a different person than the one who left. We tried to reconnect, but it was like speaking different languages. She could not understand what I had experienced, and I could not explain it in a way that made sense." He poked at the fire with a stick. "So I left. I thought maybe out here I could become someone worth knowing again." "You are worth knowing," Grusha said quietly. "You only say that because I feed you." "I say it because it is true." He looked at her, struck by the sincerity in her amber eyes. One evening in the 3rd week, a trader came through a grizzled old man named Horace, who traveled a circuit between the frontier settlements. He arrived in a wagon loaded with goods, pulled by 2 sturdy mules. Jameson went out to greet him, conscious of Grusha hanging back near the cabin, uncertain of her welcome. "James," Horace called out. "Good to see you, my friend. I have supplies, salt, sugar, some cloth if you need it." "Good timing. I am running low on both." Jameson glanced back at Grusha. "Horace, this is Grusha. She has been helping me with the farm work." Horace's eyes widened when he saw her. His hand moved instinctively to the knife at his belt. "That is an orc. She is also a person who has been working hard and causing no trouble. James, have you lost your mind? You cannot what? Accept help when it is freely offered. Show hospitality to someone in need." Jameson kept his voice level but firm. "She has done nothing to warrant suspicion, and I will thank you to treat her with respect while you are on my land." Horace stared at him, then at Grusha, then back at him. Finally, he spat into the dirt. "Your business, I suppose, but folks in the village are not going to look kindly on this if word gets out. Then perhaps you should not spread the word." They conducted their trade in tense silence. Jameson bought what he needed and paid in silver coins from his dwindling savings. Horace kept glancing at Grusha with barely concealed hostility. Before he left, the old trader leaned close to Jameson. "You are making a mistake, boy. Orcs cannot be trusted. She will turn on you when you least expect it. I will take that risk." After Horace drove away, Jameson returned to the cabin where Grusha waited. "I should go," she said. "I am causing you problems." "No." The word came out more forcefully than he intended. "You are not the problem. His prejudice is the problem. It is the same thing, practically speaking." "It is not." He moved closer to her. "You have been here 3 weeks. You have worked hard, caused no trouble, and been good company. I do not want you to leave because of what some narrow-minded trader thinks." But he was right about one thing: if people find out you are sheltering an orc, they will judge you. They might refuse to trade with you. They might even come here to drive me away, and you would be caught in the middle. Let them come. This is my land, and I decide who is welcome on it. She looked at him with an expression he could not quite read. "Why are you defending me? We barely know each other." "Because it is the right thing to do. Because you have done nothing to deserve mistreatment. Because—" He hesitated, then pressed on. "Because I have come to value your presence here, and I do not want to lose it." The words hung between them, more revealing than he had intended. Grusha's eyes widened slightly. "James, I am not saying anything you need to respond to," he said quickly. "I just want you to know that you are welcome here, not as a worker or a temporary guest, but as someone I care about. If you want to stay, you can stay." For a long moment she said nothing. Then softly, "I want to stay." Relief flooded through him. "Good. That is good." They stood there in the fading light, and something shifted between them. A door opening onto possibilities neither had dared to consider. Summer deepened into late July. The wheat grew tall and golden, ready for harvest. Jameson taught Grusha how to use a scythe, and they worked side by side in the field, cutting the grain in long, rhythmic strokes. It was brutal work under the hot sun, but they sang old work songs to keep the pace, and Grusha taught him orc harvesting chants that had a driving beat perfect for maintaining rhythm. At night, they were too exhausted to do more than eat and collapse into sleep. But there was satisfaction in the work, in seeing the results of their labor stacked in neat sheaves to dry. One afternoon, they took a break by the creek that formed the southern boundary of Jameson's property. They sat with their feet in the cool water, drinking from tin cups, sweat drying on their skin. "I never thought I would like farming," Grusha said. "In my clan, we took what we needed from the forest or from raiding, growing things. Cultivating them, it seemed slow, tedious." "It is slow," Jameson admitted, "but there is something deeply satisfying about planting a seed and watching it grow, about knowing that you created something rather than just taking it. I am beginning to understand that." She wiggled her toes in the water. "This life you have built here, it is good, simple but good. It was lonely before you came," she glanced at him. "And now it feels less like exile and more like home." She was quiet for a moment then. "I have been thinking about what happens when the harvest is done. Winter is coming. You will not need as much help then." His stomach dropped. "Are you saying you want to leave?" "I am saying I do not want to overstay my welcome. I do not want to be a burden." "You are not a burden, Grusha. You have never been a burden." He turned to face her fully. "I want you to stay. Not just through the harvest, but through winter. And after that, if you want. I want you to stay because this place is better with you in it, because I am better with you in it." She met his eyes, and he saw uncertainty there, mixed with something that might have been hope. "I am an orc. You are human. Where I come from, that matters." "It matters here too," he admitted. "To some people. But not to me. What matters to me is that you are kind, hardworking, funny, and the best companion I have ever had. The color of your skin does not change any of that, James." She reached out and took his hand, her larger fingers wrapping around his. "I have never felt about anyone the way I feel about you, but I am afraid. Afraid of what it might mean, afraid of what others might do if they knew, afraid of getting hurt." "I am afraid too," he said. "But I am more afraid of letting fear drive you away." They sat there by the creek, hands clasped, water running over their feet. Birds sang in the trees. The sun beat down warm and steady. "Stay," Jameson said. "Please stay." "All right," Grusha whispered. "I will stay." He squeezed her hand, and she squeezed back, and for a moment the world was perfect and uncomplicated. The harvest took another week to complete. They worked from dawn to dusk, cutting and bundling the wheat. When it was done, they had enough grain to last through 2 winters if stored properly, plus extra to trade. It was a good harvest, the best Jameson had seen in 3 years. They celebrated with a feast: roasted venison, fresh bread, vegetables from the garden, and blackberry pie made with berries Grusha had gathered. They ate until they were full, then sat by the fire, tired and content. "We make a good team," Jameson said. "We do." Grusha was smiling, a real smile that showed her small tusks and lit up her whole face. She was beautiful, he realized, in a way that had nothing to do with conventional standards and everything to do with the person she was. "Grusha, I need to tell you something." She looked at him expectantly. "I am falling in love with you," he said simply. "I might already be in love with you. I am not entirely sure because I have never felt quite like this before, but I needed you to know." She went very still. "You love me." "Yes, even though I am an orc. Even though my people and your people have been enemies. Even though being with me could make your life much harder. Even though all of that. I love you for who you are, not in spite of it." Tears welled in her amber eyes. I love you too, James. I have loved you for weeks, but I was too afraid to say it. I thought you could never feel the same way about someone like me. Someone like you, someone brave and strong and gentle and loyal. How could I not love you? She laughed through her tears. We are both fools, probably. She leaned toward him, and he met her halfway. Their kiss was soft and tentative at first, testing unknown waters. Then she cupped his face with one large hand, and he wrapped his arms around her, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like coming home. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. What do we do now? Grusha asked. I suppose we figure it out as we go, Jameson said. Together. Together, she agreed and kissed him again. Autumn arrived with cool nights and days that grew shorter. The leaves on the trees around Jameson's property turned brilliant shades of red and gold. They spent their days preparing for winter smoking and preserving meat, storing vegetables in the root cellar, chopping enough firewood to last through the cold months. But there was a new dimension to their work now, a tenderness that colored every interaction. Grusha would catch Jameson's eye across the garden and smile. He would brush past her in the cabin and steal a quick kiss. At night, they shared the bed in the loft, wrapped in each other's arms, talking in whispers until sleep claimed them. Jameson had never been happier. The loneliness that had driven him to this isolated place had vanished, replaced by a fullness he had not known was possible. Grusha seemed similarly transformed. She laughed more easily now, sang while she worked, and the shadows of exile that had haunted her eyes gradually faded. One morning in mid-October, Jameson woke to find Grusha already up, standing at the loft window and staring out at the forest that bordered his property. What is wrong? He asked, sitting up. I heard something last night, she said. Movement in the trees. I think someone is out there. A chill ran down his spine. Who? I do not know, but I have a bad feeling. They went outside and Grusha led him to the edge of the forest. Sure enough, there were tracks in the soft earth, boot prints, several sets of them. Humans, Grusha said, studying the tracks. 4, maybe 5. They circled the property but did not approach the cabin. Why would someone do that? Scouting, learning the layout. She looked at him, worry clear on her face. James, I think Horace told people about me. I think they are coming to drive me away. No one is driving you anywhere. This is our home, your home, and they are going to see me as a threat. Then we will convince them otherwise. But Grusha looked unconvinced, and Jameson could not entirely blame her. He had seen the hate in Horace's eyes. If the old trader had been spreading stories about an orc living on Jameson's farm, there was no telling what kind of trouble might be brewing. They spent the day on alert, but no one came. The forest remained silent and still. By evening, Jameson wanted to believe they had overreacted, that the tracks had been from hunters passing through. He was wrong. They came at dusk. 3 days later, 6 men from the village, armed with clubs and knives. Jameson heard them coming and stepped out onto the porch, positioning himself between them and the cabin. That is close enough, he called out. State your business. The leader, a barrel-chested man named Thomas Yarrow who ran the village mill, stopped about 20 yards from the porch. We heard you have an orc living here, James. That true? What business is it of yours? It is everyone's business when someone harbors a savage. Orcs are dangerous. We cannot have one living this close to the village. She has done nothing to threaten anyone. She has been here 4 months and caused no trouble. Yet, another man shouted. She has not caused trouble yet, but her kind always turns violent eventually. It is in their nature. That is ignorant prejudice speaking, not fact. Thomas's face darkened. We are not here to debate, James. We are here to tell you that the orc needs to leave. If she does not go willingly, we will drive her out. Over my dead body. Do not be dramatic. This does not concern you. It concerns me when 6 men show up at my home threatening someone under my protection." The cabin door opened behind him and Grusha stepped out. She had armed herself with a large knife, and she stood beside Jameson with her chin raised defiantly. "I am the one you came for," she said. "Let us talk like reasonable people." "We do not negotiate with orcs," Thomas spat. "Then you are fools," Grusha replied calmly, "because I have no wish to fight you, but I will if I must. And I promise you it will not go the way you expect." One of the younger men, emboldened by numbers, took a step forward. "Big words for a savage. Let us see how tough you are when—" He did not finish the sentence. Grusha moved with startling speed, crossing the distance between them in 3 long strides. She had the young man disarmed and on his knees before he could react, her knife at his throat. "I do not want to hurt anyone," she said, her voice carrying to all of them. "But I have been a warrior since I was 15 years old. I have fought humans and orcs and things that would make you soil yourselves. Do not mistake my preference for peace as weakness." She released the young man, who scrambled backward, white-faced and shaking. Thomas's hand moved to the club at his belt, but Jameson stepped forward. "If you draw that weapon, you will have to fight both of us. And before you think about your odds, consider this: you are on my property threatening people I care about. I am within my rights to defend my home. If blood is shed here, it will be on your conscience, not ours." A tense silence followed. The 6 men looked at each other, suddenly less certain. They had come expecting a lone woman they could intimidate. They had not expected organized resistance or someone willing to fight back. "This is not over," Thomas finally said. "The village council will hear about this. You cannot protect her forever." "I will protect her as long as necessary," Jameson replied. The men withdrew, but slowly, reluctantly. Jameson and Grusha stood on the porch, watching until they disappeared down the road. When they were gone, Grusha's shoulders sagged. "I should not have lost my temper. I should not have grabbed that boy. You defended yourself. You defended us. That took courage. It also made things worse. They will be back, and next time they will bring more men. Then we will deal with them when they come." She turned to him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "James, I cannot let you sacrifice everything for me. Your safety, your peace, your place in the community. You are my community now. You are what matters." He took her hands. "I am not letting you go, Grusha. Whatever comes, we face it together." She pulled him into a fierce embrace. "I do not deserve you. You deserve everything good in the world." They went inside and Jameson barred the door. Neither slept well that night, ears alert for any sound of trouble. But the darkness remained quiet and dawn came without incident. Over the next week, they reinforced their defenses. Jameson had an old crossbow from his military days, and he made sure it was in working order. They stockpiled firewood and water inside the cabin in case they were besieged. Grusha set up alarms in the forest strings with bells attached that would alert them to anyone approaching, but the attack they expected did not come. Instead, something unexpected happened. A lone rider arrived one morning, a woman on a brown horse, moving at an easy pace. She was older, perhaps 50, with graying hair tied back in a practical bun. She wore simple traveling clothes and carried no visible weapons. Jameson went out to meet her, Grusha hanging back as usual. "Good morning," the woman called out. "My name is Helena Donnelly. I am a member of the village council. May I speak with you?" "About what?" "About the orc woman living here and about preventing further violence." Jameson studied her, trying to gauge her intentions. She seemed sincere, but he had learned to be cautious. "You can speak. I am listening." Helena dismounted and approached slowly, her hands visible. "I heard about the confrontation last week. Thomas Yarrow and his men acted without council approval. We do not condone threats or intimidation. regardless of the circumstances. Then why are you here? Because there are legitimate concerns in the village. People are afraid. Orcs have raided settlements in this region before. Families have lost loved ones. That fear may not be rational when directed at one individual, but it is real, and it must be addressed. Grusha has done nothing to warrant fear. I believe you, but the people do not know her. They only know stories and their own painful histories. Helena paused. I came to propose a solution. Let me meet her. Let me speak with her. If I can go back to the village and attest to her character, it might ease tensions. Jameson looked back at the cabin where Grusha stood in the doorway. She nodded slightly permission. All right. Come inside. They sat at Jameson's table, the three of them, drinking tea that Grusha had brewed. Helena asked questions gently, without accusation. She asked about Grusha's exile, her travels, what she had been doing on Jameson's farm. Grusha answered honestly, holding nothing back. She spoke about her refusal to raid human settlements, about her desire to find a different path than endless violence. She spoke about the work she had done here, about learning to farm and build and create rather than destroy. Helena listened without interrupting. When Grusha finished, the older woman sat back with a thoughtful expression. You remind me of my daughter, she said finally. She was always questioning why things had to be the way they were, always looking for better solutions. She died in an orc raid 10 years ago. The silence that followed was heavy. Grusha's face fell. I am sorry for your loss. Thank you. I have carried that grief for a long time, and I will not lie, it has made me wary of orcs, but I have also learned that grief can blind us if we let it. We can let it make us bitter and closed, or we can let it teach us empathy for others who suffer. She looked directly at Grusha. You chose not to participate in violence even though it cost you everything. That shows character. That shows moral courage. I only did what I thought was right. Many people do not even do that much. Helena turned to Jameson. I cannot promise the entire village will accept her. Some people are too locked into their fears, but I can promise to advocate for her. I can speak to the council, explain what I have seen here. If she is willing to come to the village, to let people meet her and see that she is not a threat, that might help. You want her to come to the village? Jameson felt protective instinct flare. That could be dangerous. It could be. But staying hidden will not solve anything. People fear what they do not understand. If Grusha remains a mystery, an orc in the woods, the fear will only grow. Helena looked at Grusha. It is your choice, of course. I would not ask you to risk your safety. But if you want a real chance at building a life here, at being accepted, you will have to be seen. Grusha was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I will come. I will meet with your council, answer their questions, let them see me. If there is a chance for peace, I want to take it. You do not have to do this, Jameson said. We can manage on our own. No, we cannot, not forever. She covered his hand with hers. Helena is right. Hiding will only make things worse. I would rather face fear head-on than live looking over my shoulder. Helena smiled. You are braver than many warriors I have known. We will arrange a meeting for next week. I will make sure security is in place, no more mobs with clubs. This will be done properly, peacefully. After Helena left, Jameson pulled Grusha into his arms. Are you sure about this? No. But I am sure I want to try for us, for the life we are building. Whatever happens, I am with you. I know, she said softly. That is why I can be brave. The week passed in a blur of nervous anticipation. They continued their daily work, but tension ran beneath everything. Grusha practiced what she would say to the council, and Jameson made plans for every contingency he could think of. The morning of the meeting arrived cold and clear. They dressed carefully, Grusha in clothes they had made for her, simple but well fitted. that made her look respectable without hiding her nature. Jameson wore his best shirt and coat, wanting to present a united front. They rode to the village together on Bessie, Grusha sitting behind Jameson with her arms around his waist. The journey took 2 hours, and with each mile, Jameson felt his anxiety grow. He kept expecting an ambush, an attack, something to go wrong. But they arrived without incident. The village square was crowded. It seemed half the population had turned out to see the orc. Jameson heard muttering, saw hostile faces, but also saw curiosity in some eyes. Helena met them at the town hall, a sturdy building in the center of the square. The council is ready. There will be 6 members present, plus myself as mediator. You will both be allowed to speak. Please follow me. They entered a room with a long table. 6 people sat on one side, men and women of various ages, all watching Grusha with expressions ranging from suspicion to open hostility. Thomas Yarrow was among them, his face set in a grim scowl. Helena gestured to chairs on the opposite side of the table. Jameson and Grusha sat, hands clasped under the table. "Thank you for coming," Helena began. "This is an unprecedented situation, and we are all trying to navigate it as best we can. Grusha, would you please introduce yourself and explain why you are living in our territory?" Grusha stood. Jameson could see her hands trembling slightly, but her voice was steady as she spoke. "My name is Grusha. I am 23 years old. I was born into the Ironjaw clan in the northern mountains. I trained as a scout and hunter. 4 months ago, I was exiled because I refused to participate in a raid on a human settlement. I have been wandering since then, trying to find a place where I might be allowed to live in peace." "Why should we believe that?" Thomas interrupted. "Why should we believe you would not spy on us, report back to your clan?" "I have no clan," Grusha said simply. "I am alone. Exile means I am dead to my people. If I returned, they would kill me for my disobedience. You could be lying. I could be, but I am not." She looked at each council member in turn. "I understand your fear. I know orcs have hurt people here. But I am one person, and I am asking only to be judged on my own actions, not on what others have done." An older woman spoke up, thin, with sharp eyes. "What exactly have you been doing on Jameson Yardley's farm?" "Working. I have helped with the harvest, mended fences, hunted game, preserved food for winter. I have built and repaired and created. I have tried to be useful." "And James pays you for this work?" Thomas asked with a sneer. "He gives me food and shelter. I ask for nothing more. How convenient. A savage living off human charity." Jameson stood, anger flashing. "That is enough. Grusha has worked harder than any hired hand I could afford. She has earned everything she has received and more." "Sit down, James," Helena said gently. "Let us keep this civil." Jameson sat, but he kept his glare fixed on Thomas. Another council member, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, spoke. "Grusha, what are your intentions? Do you plan to stay here permanently? If I am allowed, yes. I want to build a life here. I want to work to contribute, to be part of a community." She hesitated, then added, "I love James. He loves me. We want to make a home together." Shocked silence filled the room. Several council members exchanged glances. Thomas looked like he had bitten into something rotten. "You are saying you want to marry a human?" the older woman asked. "If he will have me, yes." "That is an abomination," Thomas spat. "Humans and orcs do not mix. It is unnatural." "Why?" Jameson stood again, his voice hard. "Because she has green skin. Because she is stronger than most humans. Those are superficial differences. She is intelligent, kind, hardworking, and loyal. She is a better person than half the people I knew in the settlements. If we want to build a life together, that is our business, not yours." "It becomes our business when it affects the safety of the village," Thomas shot back. "How does it affect your safety?" She has threatened no one. She has caused no trouble. The only violence has come from your side when you and your men came to my farm with weapons and threats. That was to protect the village. No, that was your prejudice and fear talking, and it will not stand. Helena raised her hands. Gentlemen, please, this is not productive. She looked at the other council members. I think we have heard enough to make an informed decision. Shall we vote? The council members conferred in whispers. Jameson watched, his heart pounding. Beside him, Grusha sat very still, her face unreadable. Finally, Helena spoke. The vote is 4-2 in favor of allowing Grusha to remain in the territory, provided she agrees to certain conditions. Relief flooded through Jameson. What conditions? She must check in with the council once per season so we can monitor the situation. She must not venture into the village unless accompanied by James or another human resident who vouches for her. And if there is any trouble, any violence or threat, the agreement is void. Those terms are acceptable, Grusha said before Jameson could respond. Thank you for giving me a chance. Thomas stood abruptly. This is a mistake. Mark my words, we will regret this. He stormed out of the room. The other council member who had voted against a young man who had avoided eye contact throughout followed him out silently. Helena sighed. Not everyone will accept this decision. You should be prepared for that. We will be careful, Jameson said. They left the town hall to find a crowd still gathered in the square. Word of the council's decision had already spread. Some people looked angry, others curious. A few faces were openly friendly. Helena was not the only one willing to give Grusha a chance. An old woman approached, bent with age but moving purposefully. She looked up at Grusha with rheumy eyes. You are the orc girl. Yes, grandmother, Grusha said respectfully. You refuse to raid human settlements. Yes. The old woman nodded slowly. My son died in an orc raid 20 years ago. I have hated your kind for a long time. She paused. But Helena spoke well of you. She said you were different. If you are truly trying to choose peace over violence, then maybe there is hope for all of us. She reached out and patted Grusha's arm. Do not make me regret giving you a chance, child. I will not, grandmother. I promise. The old woman shuffled away, and several others approached cautiously but not hostilely. They asked questions, and Grusha answered patiently, never showing frustration or anger despite the invasive nature of some inquiries. By the time they left the village, the sun was setting. They rode home in the gathering dusk, both exhausted but cautiously optimistic. That went better than I expected, Jameson said. For now, Thomas Yarrow will not give up easily. No, he will not, but he is only one man. Others were willing to listen to give you a chance. That is something. Grusha rested her head against his back. Thank you for defending me in there. For standing with me. Always. Winter came with a vengeance in December, bringing heavy snows that buried the farm in drifts that reached past the windows. Jameson and Grusha spent long days inside the cabin, emerging only to care for Bessie in the barn and to keep pathways clear. But the forced confinement was not unpleasant. They cooked together, read by firelight, played games with dice and carved pieces. They talked about everything and nothing. They made love slowly and tenderly, learning each other's bodies, finding joy in intimacy. Jameson carved wooden toys, a project he had started years ago but never finished. Grusha sewed a quilt from scraps of fabric, her large fingers managing the delicate work with surprising grace. They were building a life together, piece by piece. One evening in late January, as snow fell heavy and silent outside, Jameson pulled out a small wooden box from his trunk. Inside was a ring, simple gold, set with a small blue stone. It had been his grandmother's. Grusha, he said, suddenly nervous. I know we have talked about a future together, but I want to make it official. I want everyone to know that you are mine and I am yours." He held out the ring. "Will you marry me?" She stared at the ring, then at him, her eyes wide. "James, are you certain?" "Marriage will make everything more complicated. It will formalize our bond in a way that many people will not accept." "I do not care what other people accept. I care what is true in my heart, and that is that I love you and want to spend my life with you. So yes, I am certain." "The question is, are you?" Slowly, she reached out and took the ring. She held it up to the firelight, watching it sparkle. Then she slipped it onto her finger. It fit perfectly on her ring finger. "Yes," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you." He pulled her into his arms, and they held each other as the fire crackled, and the snow fell, and the world outside ceased to matter. They married in early March, as soon as the roads cleared enough for travel. Helena agreed to officiate, and they held the ceremony at Jameson's farm, just the three of them. It was small and simple, but deeply meaningful. Jameson spoke vows he had written himself. "I promise to stand with you through every storm, to honor your strength and protect your vulnerability, to build a life where we can both thrive. I promise to love you for all that you are and all that you will become." Grush's vows were equally heartfelt. "I promise to be your partner in all things, to bring to our life the best of what I am. I promise to fight for us, to work for us, to never stop choosing you. I promise to love you with everything I have, for as long as I live." Helena pronounced them husband and wife, and they sealed the union with a kiss that tasted of tears and joy in equal measure. Spring brought new challenges and new opportunities. Word of their marriage spread, generating reactions that ranged from acceptance to outrage. Some people refused to acknowledge the union as legitimate. Others, surprisingly, sent small gifts: a set of iron pots, a hunting knife, a quilt. Thomas Yarrow continued his campaign against Grush's presence, but his influence waned as people got used to seeing the orc woman at Jameson's side during their quarterly visits to the village. She was quiet, respectful, causing no trouble. It became harder to paint her as a threat when she was simply buying supplies and being polite to shopkeepers. In April, a young couple from the village came to Jameson's farm seeking advice. They wanted to start their own homestead, but did not know where to begin. Jameson and Grusha spent a day teaching them about crop rotation, soil preparation, tool maintenance. More people followed. Grusha's hunting skills became legendary. She could track game through terrain where humans would get lost. She began leading hunting parties, showing villagers techniques for finding deer and wild boar. Jameson taught farming workshops, sharing techniques he had developed over his years of solitary work. Slowly, grudgingly, they became part of the community. Not fully accepted by everyone, but no longer complete outsiders. In June, on a warm afternoon exactly 1 year after Grusha had stood in Jameson's wheat field in the pouring rain, they sat on their porch watching the new crop grow tall and green. "You ever regret it?" Jameson asked. "Giving up your old life, living as an outcast?" Grusha considered the question. "I regret nothing that led me to you. The exile was painful, the wandering was hard, but it brought me here, and here is where I belong. Even with the prejudice, the suspicious looks, the people who will never accept you, even with all of that. Because I have you, and I have work that matters, and I have a home. Those things are worth more than easy acceptance from people who do not know me." He took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. "I am grateful every day that you were stubborn enough to stand in my field for 8 hours, she laughed. "I am grateful you were kind enough to finally let me in. I will always let you in. No matter what storms come, my door is open to you, and mine to you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun move across the sky. In the distance, they could hear Bessie moving in the barn. Birds sang in the trees. The wheat rustled in the breeze. It was not a life without challenges. There would be more difficult days ahead, more confrontations with prejudice, more obstacles to overcome. But they would face those challenges together, as partners, as a team, as two people who had found in each other something worth fighting for. By autumn, their relationship with the village had evolved into something approaching normalcy. Helena remained a staunch ally, and her advocacy had convinced most of the council that Grusha posed no threat. Even Thomas Yarrow, while still disapproving, had stopped his active opposition. More importantly, Grusha had proven herself useful in ways that transcended fear. When a child went missing in the forest in September, it was Grusha who tracked her down, finding the girl unharmed in a ravine where she had fallen while picking berries. When winter stores ran low for several families after a barn fire destroyed their reserves, it was Jameson and Grusha who shared their surplus, asking nothing in return. These acts of kindness accumulated, building a reputation that was harder to dismiss than abstract fear. In October, Helena approached them with an unexpected request. The village was planning to send a delegation to a regional gathering where multiple settlements would discuss trade routes and mutual defense. She wanted Grusha to come as an advisor on orc territories and customs. "Your knowledge could be invaluable," Helena explained. "You know how orc clans think, how they move, what might provoke or prevent conflict. If we can learn from that, we might save lives." Grusha was hesitant. "I have not been part of that world for 2 years. My information may be outdated." "But you understand the fundamental principles, the culture. That is more than anyone else here has." After much discussion, Grusha agreed. The delegation left in early November, 5 people including Helena, Grusha, and Jameson. They traveled for 3 days to reach a larger town where the gathering was being held. The reaction to Grusha was mixed. Some delegates were openly hostile, refusing to sit at the same table as an orc. Others were curious, even respectful. Grusha handled it all with remarkable grace, never losing her temper or responding to provocations. During a discussion about border security, she offered insights that shifted the entire conversation. "You assume orcs raid because they enjoy violence," she said. "That is sometimes true, but more often, raids happen because clans are desperate. Resources are scarce in the mountains. When winters are hard or hunting is poor, raiding becomes a survival strategy, not just bloodlust. If you want to reduce raids, offering trade might be more effective than building higher walls." A delegate from a mining settlement scoffed. "Trade with orcs. They are savages who cannot be negotiated with." "I am an orc," Grusha said mildly. "Do I seem unable to negotiate?" The man had no response to that. Another delegate, an older man with intelligent eyes, leaned forward. "What would orcs want in trade? Metal tools, grain, medicine. Things that are difficult to produce in mountain territories. In exchange, orcs can offer furs, rare herbs, gemstones from deep mines. There is potential for mutually beneficial exchange if both sides are willing to try." The conversation continued for hours. Not everyone was convinced, but seeds had been planted. Several delegates asked to speak with Grusha privately, seeking advice on their specific situations. By the time the delegation returned home, Grusha had become something unexpected, an ambassador of sorts, a bridge between two peoples who had been at war for generations. "You were magnificent," Jameson told her as they rode home. "The way you handled those hostile questions, the solutions you proposed, you may have changed minds that have been closed for decades. I only spoke the truth as I see it. Whether anyone listens is beyond my control. Some will listen. And those who do might make a difference." Winter came again, their second together. It was gentler than the previous year, with less snow and warmer temperatures. They fell into familiar rhythms: morning chores, afternoon projects, evening companionship. But there was a new dimension to their life now, a sense of being part of something larger than themselves. Villagers visited more frequently, seeking advice or simply company. Grusha taught a group of young hunters her tracking techniques. Jameson mentored two men who wanted to start their own farms. Their home became a gathering place, a neutral ground where people could come together without judgment. One evening in February, as they sat by the fire, Grusha placed Jameson's hand on her stomach. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice soft and nervous. He looked at her, seeing joy and fear mixed in her expression. "What is it?" "I am pregnant." For a moment the world seemed to stop, then joy exploded through him, so intense it was almost painful. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be. I have missed my monthly courses for 3 months now, and I have been feeling different. I think we are going to have a child." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "A child, our child. Are you happy?" she asked. "I know it will be complicated." "A child who is half human, half orc. People may not accept them. Let them try to reject our child. They will have to go through me first." He pulled back to look at her face. "I am thrilled, Grusha. Terrified but thrilled. We are going to be parents." She laughed through tears. "We are going to be parents." They spent the rest of the evening making plans, talking about the future, imagining what their child might be like. Would they have Grusha's strength? Jameson's eyes? Both, neither. It did not matter. They would love this child fiercely, protect them completely, raise them to be proud of both halves of their heritage. Pregnancy agreed with Grusha, at least at first. She glowed with health, her strength seemingly multiplied. But as spring arrived and she grew larger, the physical challenges became more apparent. Orc pregnancies were different from human ones: shorter gestation, larger babies. Helena consulted with midwives and what few texts existed on mixed heritage births. "There is not much information," Helena admitted during one of her visits. "But from what I can gather, the pregnancy will last about 7 months instead of 9. The birth may be difficult because of the baby's size." "What can we do to prepare?" Jameson asked, fighting down panic. "Make sure Grusha eats well, gets rest, stays active but not overworked. And when the time comes, I will be here with the best midwife in the territory. We will do everything possible to keep both mother and child safe." Jameson threw himself into preparation. He built a cradle from smooth pine, carving intricate patterns along the sides. He stockpiled supplies: soft cloth for swaddling, herbs for pain and healing, everything Helena said they might need. He prepared the loft, making it as comfortable and safe as possible. Grusha continued her daily work as long as she could, but eventually her growing belly made heavy labor impossible. She turned to lighter tasks: sewing baby clothes, organizing the cabin, teaching Jameson recipes that would be easy to prepare when she was recovering from birth. In May, as the wheat grew tall once more, their child arrived. The labor was long and difficult. Grusha bore it with remarkable strength, but Jameson could see the toll it took. Helena and the midwife, a capable woman named Margaret, worked tirelessly. Jameson felt helpless, able only to hold Grusha's hand and offer encouragement. Finally, after 14 hours, a baby's cry split the air. "It is a girl," Margaret announced, holding up a squirming infant. "A healthy girl." Grusha collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted but smiling. The midwife cleaned the baby and wrapped her in soft cloth before placing her in Grusha's arms. Jameson looked down at his daughter and felt his heart expand beyond what he thought possible. She was perfect, tiny but strong, with green-tinged skin lighter than Grusha's but darker than his own. Her eyes, when they opened, were bright blue. Small nubs that would become tusks were barely visible. Her ears came to delicate points. She was absolutely beautiful. "What should we name her?" Grusha whispered, tears streaming down her face. They had discussed names but never settled on one. Now, looking at his daughter's face, Jameson knew. "Alina," he said. "It means light. She is our light." "Alina," Grusha repeated. "Yes, perfect." They sat together, the three of them, as dawn light filled the loft. Their daughter made small sounds, her tiny fist wrapping around Jameson's finger with surprising strength. "Welcome to the world, Alina," Jameson murmured. "You are so loved already." Recovery was slow for Grusha, but within a week, she was back on her feet, tending to Alina with the same fierce dedication she brought to everything. The baby was healthy and strong, growing noticeably each day. News of Alina's birth spread through the village. Reactions were mixed. Some congratulated them warmly. Others muttered about abominations and bad omens. But when Helena brought the baby to a council meeting to officially register her birth, something unexpected happened. The old woman who had given Grusha a chance 2 years ago asked to hold the baby. She cradled Alina gently, looking down at her with soft eyes. "She is beautiful," the old woman said, "and she is innocent. Whatever prejudices we carry, this child deserves a chance to grow up free of them." Her words seemed to shift something in the room. Even Thomas Yarrow, who had remained hostile, said nothing against the baby. She was too obviously precious, too clearly loved. Alina became a bridge in ways her parents had not anticipated. People who had been wary of Grusha softened when they saw her as a mother, fiercely protective of her child. Jameson, already respected for his farming knowledge, gained additional admiration for his devotion to his family. As summer deepened, the three of them fell into new rhythms. Mornings were for Alina, feeding her, playing with her, watching her discover the world. Afternoons, while she napped, were for farm work, though they took turns so someone was always with her. Evenings were for family time, sitting together on the porch, watching the sunset, marveling at the life they had created. One evening in July, exactly 2 years after that rain-soaked day when everything began, they sat on the porch with Alina nestled between them. She was 2 months old, already alert and curious, her blue eyes taking in everything. "You remember standing in that field?" Jameson asked. "Soaked through, refusing to leave," Grusha smiled. "I remember thinking I had nothing left to lose. That if this stubborn human would not help me, I might as well just stop trying. I am glad you did not stop. I am glad you finally came out to get me. Best decision I ever made." She leaned her head against his shoulder. Alina made a small cooing sound, and they both looked down at her, their faces transformed by love. "She is going to have a good life," Grusha said. "We will make sure of it. She will know both sides of her heritage. She will be strong like her mother and kind like her father. She will grow up knowing she is loved, no matter what the world says." "She will be extraordinary," Jameson agreed. "Like her mother." In the distance, the wheat swayed in the evening breeze, golden and abundant. The sky blazed with sunset colors. Birds sang their evening songs. Everything was peaceful. Everything was right. They had built something remarkable here, not just a farm, not just a home, but a testament to what was possible when two people chose love over fear, when they stood together against prejudice and doubt. There would be challenges ahead. Alina would grow up navigating a world that might not always accept her. They would face continued suspicion from some quarters. The peace between humans and orcs remained fragile. But sitting there on their porch, their daughter between them, their hands clasped together, Jameson felt nothing but hope. They had proven that bridges could be built between different peoples, that love could transcend boundaries that seemed absolute. That stubbornness and patience and unwavering commitment could create miracles. "I love you," he said to Grusha. "I will love you until my last breath." "And I love you," she replied. "You are my home, James. You and Alina. Wherever you are is where I belong." Alina chose that moment to grab both their fingers, her small hands surprisingly strong. They laughed, and the sound carried across the farm, into the wheat fields, up to the darkening sky. This was their happily ever after, not perfect, not without challenges, but real and precious and earned. They had stood in the rain and refused to give up. They had waited until the door opened. And now they had everything that mattered. As darkness fell and stars emerged overhead, they carried Alina inside, tucked her into her cradle, and held each other close. Tomorrow would bring new work, new challenges, new small joys. But tonight, they simply existed in the fullness of their love, grateful for the path that had brought them together, grateful for the life they had built, grateful for every rain-soaked, stubborn, beautiful moment that had led them to this perfect now. And outside, the wheat rustled in the night breeze, a whisper of growth and promise as the world turned and their story continued, not in grand gestures but in the steady, faithful work of building a life together, day by day, moment by moment, with love as the foundation on which everything else was built.